Hi everyone, welcome to our next Brownbag session about SQAI and also of course with our customer EverESSt who will also share a little bit of their experience with this application. So first, before we start, I would like to make a few introductions. So we're going to have two sub-sessions actually. At first, Dean will from SQAI will explain a little bit in general about SQAI, show a little demo, and afterwards the customer EverESSt will show their experience to you or explain their experience to you. Let me quickly say how to ask questions. After the session, we will go through them all and answer them all. Leaves me to leave the floor for Dean. Good luck.
Thanks, 𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀. Hi, everybody. For those of you who do not know me, I'm Dean, and I'm part of the founding team of SQAI Suite. I would summarize my role as a customer success manager to date, where I make sure that our customers and partners have everything they have to make the best out of our product. And of course, EverESSt is hopefully a great example of my efforts, but I will leave that to Christophe and Joren. To give you a little bit of spatial awareness about what SQAI is, what the product does, I will give you a very short introduction to the platform, followed by a demo. So bear with me for a little bit. I'm going to share my screen. Normally, you should be able to see my screen right now. There we go. So what is SQAI Suite? SQAI Suite is an AI-powered platform that can supercharge the way you do software delivery today. Yeah. And we've built it from the perspective that we still saw that despite the fact of test automation being embedded in a lot of organizations, that software testing still remains very much a manual, a costly and slow affair. And with the rise of Gen AI, we saw a lot of opportunities to improve that, but none of the tools that we evaluated ourselves actually fitted to our standards. So we decided to build and market our own platform, which combines a blend of AI and machine speed together with the human testing insights to actually cut your time to value from weeks to hours so your teams can deliver more quality faster. Yeah, that is the mentality we carry in everything we do and everything we develop at the company. So how would you best look at SQAI Suite? In essence, SQAI Suite is a digital software testing companion that amplifies the expertise and the speed of the human tester. So if you would look at it from the perspective of, let's say, the industry standard testing lifecycle you see in front of you, if you enable your digital QA companion from SQAI Suite in that flow, you will notice that you will be able to get a lot more testing work and coverage done in a way smaller amount of time so that your organization and software delivery lifecycle can speed up significantly. Yeah. Um, I am explicitly referring to SQAI as a companion because you really should look at it as a virtual teammate that plugs into your workflow. In comparison with some of the other platforms that are on the market today, we are an open ecosystem that actually does everything the way you would onboard an actual coworker. Yeah, when somebody starts working in your test environment, you give that people access to information, you give them access to your tool stack, for example, Jira, Confluence, Azure DevOps, your test automation repos, documentation, work items, and everything like that. So that your virtual colleague can learn from that matter and then help you in every part of that workflow by, for example, doing a requirements analysis for you, and then all the way from creating test cases to automating those and creating the test data in your system under test so that they can be executed, but in such a way that you as the human are still in the loop and still in control with critical validation points built into our solution, in real time integrated in your landscape, meaning that SKAI works in the tooling landscape and the testing landscape where you as the human work as well. Now, here on the left side, you already see a sneak peek of our platform. I will give you a live demo soon, but you have already an idea what it looks like. But the setup on the right side is a bit more important to stress because in comparison with other platforms, SKAI Suite is an agentic AI solution, which means that we employ several virtual colleagues, let's call them AI agents here, that are trained for a specific task at hand and that are automatically used and chosen by the AI supervisor you are conversing with. So this means that you have a whole virtual team of colleagues in your pocket or on your laptop in this case. So you have a virtual test engineer, which is trained to create highly contextualized and qualitative test cases. Then you have an automation scripter agent which runs its own large language model to write very good contextual test automation code and scripts. And then you have a test data generator to fill in the gap, a performance tester, and so on. Yeah, the agents you see here, it's not a limited list, and our landscape is growing every day because the use cases have been so successful in the past. So what challenges does SKAI Suite actually solve? First of all, it's a plug and play platform. We want to be an open AI ecosystem, meaning that you will not have to change the way you do software testing or the tooling you use today. The intent is that we can openly plug into your ecosystem without you having to do the heavy cost and investment in migrating to something else. And it also avoids a lot of copy paste work in knowledge management because it is deeply integrated in the tooling landscape and the workflow you use. On the other hand, we come from a software testing company originally, and then we spun off as a product company, which makes it so that we take the craft of software testing very, very seriously. Therefore, we made sure that we developed our AI agent in such a way that they deliver not only clarity, confidence, and speed, but also higher quality responses than your average AI testing tool that you find on the market to date. And we do all of that in a private and secure environment, meaning that SKAI runs in a private cloud for you and that your data is never used to train any external LLM, with all compliance and traceability naturally built in. Yeah, so that it covers your legal and operational needs, which makes it so that you just get happier engineering teams. Every customer we onboard, we see that they become very happy from the repetitive work, even automation scripting work that SKAI Suite takes out of their hands because it enables them to actually preserve the knowledge in their organizations, qualify and quantify that knowledge. I think that's also a part where 𝗕𝗿𝗄 and Joren from EverESSt can provide a very nice perspective in this session. And overall, it keeps all teams aligned. Yeah. So from this point, I think I'm going to dive in to the demo. Then I'll have to share another window, of course. All right, so let's go. So what you see in front of you is obviously the SKAI Suite interface. Let me put it on light mode. That may be a little bit easier on the eyes for this session. But useful to note is that, as I already said in the slide, SKAI Suite plugs in to your software testing landscape to make sure that it gets the context, the information, the knowledge that is going around from the applications you work in, day out. Yeah. And you can give that knowledge in two ways. So you either do a live connect to your platform, and that is where we support quite the amount of platforms. For example, the full Azure DevOps stack is supported out of the box in self-service configurations. We connect to browser stack. We connect to the Atlassian tool landscape with the Bitbucket, Confluence, Jira, different kinds of Git repositories, Notion, SharePoint, and then a handful of test management tools that have a qualitative API to connect with. Yeah. For this demo, we have 𝗕𝗕𝗀𝗀𝗃 connected, we have Jira connected, we have Confluence connected, and as a code base, if I'm not mistaken, we have GitHub connected. Yeah. In case you would have any form of knowledge or information that is not stored in the tool stacks we connect with, that's no problem. You can still revert to a classical way of AI training, which is basically by uploading all the remaining documents you have to SQAI so that it can index them in their learning engine. Yeah. So that way you're not contained to the connected integrations, but you can upload anything you like to give SQAI additional context. Now, what does a workflow in SQAI look like? Like any AI-powered platform, the best way to interact with it is still by having a chat conversation with it. So from that perspective, we have a chat interface that closely resembles what you would get in, for example, Google's Gemini or Microsoft Copilot, but with specific functionalities baked in for, let's summarize it as tech professionals, yeah, meaning software testers, but not only them, also product owners, analysts, and so on. Also a key point that Joren and Christoph will stress in the EverESSt use case. Now, this interface has these specificities baked in, and one of them, for example, is the prompt library. Yeah, we know if you have good input, you can upload that in AI and you will get fairly good output, but the quality of your prompt also matters. So if you have prompts that you reuse a lot, you can save them here. But when you save them, your colleagues using SQAI will also see your favorite prompts, which is a very good way of getting the AI maturity in the organization at the same level fairly quick and standardize the prompting techniques being used. Now, you don't have to start out storing your own prompts from SQAI Suite itself. You have an amount of prompts that we have already foreseen in the instance, which are completely searchable, and you can reuse it, fill it in with your parameters, and then it will work as expected. Now, in this case, I will reuse a prompt that I use a lot. I'm going to ask SQAI to consult my Jira instance and list me all the tickets that are assigned to myself in the Shipco project that I'm working on. And I want those tickets to at least have acceptance criteria. Otherwise, from my perspective as a software tester, I do not look at them. So if I launch this prompt, you'll immediately see one of our unique selling points in the workings. You're not talking to just one large language model at a time. No, you're talking actually to multiple AI agents who each have their own large language model behind it. In this case, SQAI Suite has detected my intent, and it gave that task to the Jira agent, which then replies to me, I can go ahead and search Jira for you, and I will do that via a JQL query this way. Is it okay if I proceed? And this is, if you remember that flow in my presentation, this is already the human in the loop part where I validate the action that SQAI is going to take. In this case, I will click yes, proceed, because the JQL query looks fairly okay. So I will tell SQAI, okay, yes, go ahead. And then you'll immediately see that the Jira agent is going to search for the tickets that I have requested. It will provide him back with a source summary, and I see which sources have been consulted. I see the Atlassian Stack logo and I see the ticket ID. So I get the summary of the ticket, which is about assigning item tracking during picking, and we're testing a warehouse management system here. So if I click through, I can immediately go and fact check SQAI Suite, because it brings me directly to the ticket that it is talking about, which is a good response for me to go ahead and review it. Now, once I'm here, imagine the following scenario. I had a conversation with my analyst last week about that ticket, and he said he was going to write some documentation on Confluence, and he probably did, but he's on holiday now, so I can't ask him. That is not a problem for me, because I can just go ahead and ask SQAI to go and read everything there is in Confluence and find out if there is anything related to the above ticket, specifically information related to item tracking during picking, yeah, because that is what I'm working on. Once I'm launching that, you immediately see SQAI detecting my intent and the Confluence agent taking over and crawling Confluence live for me now. And that really is live, meaning that if somebody else would make a change or have made a change a few seconds ago in Confluence, it will already be synced in SQAI Suite. Yeah. Um, so from that perspective, I'm get my answer as a summary, and yes, indeed, it has found the information that I needed, and it has consulted 16 different sources for it to form that answer. I can go ahead and look at those sources, and then my memory can be refreshed, and I can realize, well, it was probably this page where the feedback came from, which then directly brings me to the source of the information in Confluence, which I can do a quick fact check. Does it have anything about item tracking in here? And yes, it does. So it's this paragraph specifically that had the information about the item tracking, which is good. This is a good way for me. I can fact check it, or maybe see that that there is still a part of the documentation wrong, and I can adapt it. Yeah, that's also a use case we see a lot of customers use it for. But by this point in time, I have quite the amount of context in this conversation, which also means, because I'm a tester, that I can now have SQAI create or draft at least the test cases for me. Yeah. And you'll immediately see SQAI detects my intent, and it's the test case generator agent who is now generating a highly contextualized test case for me. Yeah. It does that in a predefined format. Yeah? It's title, precondition, step-by-step description, expected result, and so on. And then it will present the test case back to me with the notion that it is connected to my test management tool. And if I like, it can inject those test cases there. Now, here again, human in the loop is very important. I always validate the output that comes out of SQAI or any AI platform for that matter. So I would also do it here and say that, for example, if I detected that the last part needs a small change, I could prompt it to redo it, but that would be burning unnecessary AI tokens. I can also click modify and proceed, which gives me a lightweight test editor directly from within SQAI Suite. That also means if I make this change, for example, I'm going to make this fail and I remove this row, that SQAI Suite will continue on this latest version of the test that I adapted, yeah, to make sure that the information flow stays in sync. So if I have it proceeding, it will now go ahead and inject that test case in my test management platform. Yeah. So imagine the following scenario. If I click this link, I end up in my test management tool. But imagine the scenario that I say, okay, my work is done for today. I'm going home, and my colleague comes in and needs to continue work on that test case. That person will not have access to my private chat in SQAI, but that person will have access to my data table section in my SQAI Suite organization. Yeah. So that person can see the test cases that were generated. Our local time is at 12:23. So we see at 12:22, I generated a test case. So that colleague can come in and go ahead and validate that test case again directly in our test management tool. In this demo, it is Zephyr Scale, but it can also be another test management platform like X-Ray, TestRay, and so on. There are two things useful to note. First of all, naturally, the details are filled out. You have the name, precondition, then the actual test steps are filled out as you would expect. But SQAI will always publish test cases as draft. Yeah. And that is needed for the EU AI Act because it's becoming law somewhere next year. And you need to make a very clear difference between AI generated and human validated. Yeah. And yeah, oddly as enough, me approving this test case counts as human validation of a test case that has been labeled with an AI generated tag. Yeah. Also good to note, if I still see something here, for example, my colleague missed something, this is not a shipment line, it's a picking line, for example, this change will also be synced back to SQAI Suite so that it will use the latest version of that test case to continue work upon. Yeah. And by continue work, I mainly mean automation, right? So you noticed, as I said in the beginning with the integrations, we have a GitHub repository connected. And in our GitHub repository, we have a Playwright and TypeScript test automation framework, which is already there. So if I go ahead in SQAI and I use the side menu here, I can say, I want you to automate this test script. And then I get this nice pop over where I can either say, yes, I want you to attempt build, meaning that it will compile and test its own code and do its best to fix the errors, or until the code runs, or until it realizes it needs a human intervention, and then it will create a pull request. Yeah. And I can also provide any additional instructions here. And that is basically all I have to do from this perspective, because SQAI Suite will learn from the test automation repository you have connected to it. So it will learn basically how did the humans write code up until this point in time, and it will replicate that behavior, meaning your naming conventions, your configuration files, your chosen technology, your commenting structure, everything like that. It will learn from the actual repository. Yeah. I'm going to turn this part off because it will take a bit longer to create a pull request. Well, if I click generate here, it will go ahead and start a test automation job, which means that in the background, there are now several AI agents writing code for me. So normally in practice, I stop staring at this screen. I just let it run and I go work on something else. And maybe for the purpose of the demo, I will do just the same, so I can give Christophe and Jor an adequate time to talk about SQAI at EverESSt. I'm going to pick one here that already has a pull request. For example, this one. So when SQAI is done generating code, it will push it as a pull request to your code repository for an actual human to review. So if I open this pull request, you can see that SQAI has created actual code here. Yeah. And this code is either completely runnable, where there are no to-dos in there, or if there are to-dos in there, then you still need to do adaptations. Yeah. So for here, for example, you see that it's a minimal comment section. It has executable code, and nowhere in there do I see a specific to-do being flagged. So that's good. Yeah. That's also the level of quality we want to give. But I can give you another example. I'm looking for a to-do. There is none. So this code will run out of the box. Going to give you another example fairly quickly. Maybe our example is ready by now. Not yet. Let me go ahead. Give you some other example. This also has no to-dos, which is great. I'm going to have to go back a bit lower in the chart, I think. Just a second. Let me go back to one of those. There we go. So this one does have to-dos. The reason why I was looking for code that has an actual to-do in it is because we all know that AI can hallucinate. And SQAI is prone to hallucination as well. We're not going to say that SQAI cannot hallucinate now and then. But what we did do is work with, how would I say it? I call it some sort of anti-hallucination policy, where in the case that SQAI is not sure when it's generating code, or it is missing some context, that it will alert the human in a proactive way about that. So in this case, it has created the automation code, which was mainly for front-end tests. The other tests you saw were more API-related tests. And like for here, it doesn't have this object right here. It doesn't have the sales order ID that is needed, because either we didn't connect it to the test data, or we didn't provide it in our context, or SQAI just didn't have it. In that case, it could just hallucinate something, but we actually programmed it just to place it to do, so that you as a human know that, okay, I will still have to replace this placeholder with the actual sales order ID. Yeah. All the rest where there is no to do is just 100% runnable code. Yeah. You see here, replace selector and logic for serial numbers. That's because I need to input the actual data in there, or at least my configuration placeholders. But everything else is completely runnable code. That is in a nutshell what SQAI can do on an automation level. Do note, in this instance, I happen to have a data blob uploaded about my item categories for the test that I'm working on. So I can also go ahead and ask SQAI to synthesize the test data for me. In this case, it's a warehouse management plugin for Microsoft Dynamics. So the data engine behind it is Azure SQL. And based on that data blob and the test cases I have, it will create a data injection script I can immediately reuse in my Azure SQL editor. This might take a while because it's more of a complex task to complete, but bear with me. There we go, the answer's coming. And so it's giving me the injection script right now. It will do that as a copyable code block, which also means you can use it as your coding assistant if you like. But you see that it is created the test data for me for my specific testing conditions and linked it to it. I can just go ahead, copy this code block in my Azure SQL editor and run it to make sure that there is at least synthesized or mocked test data available in my test environment, whether it's my local development one or my actual test environment that I have, right? So that is in a nutshell the capabilities of SQAI. Know that we also have an MCP server, which makes it so that you can use all capabilities you just saw of SQAI Suite in your favorite AI-powered IDE, for example, in Visual Studio Code, Cursor, Cloud Desktop, and so on, just by putting an MCP config file in your project. That means you can use SQAI in a more technical setting on your local branch without having to switch your screen to the browser. And I think with that, Jdᵗ, Christophe, and Joren, I can conclude my demo part, and I would happily pass on the microphone to Christophe and Joren from EverESSt to discuss their use case.
Thank you, Dean, for that demo as well. And there we go. So why SQAI at EverESSt and how are we using it? So I think like a lot of people notice as well that testing, we have a lot of documentation. And if a test analyst needs to go through all the documentation, that would be time consuming. And also people are not able to find all documentation that's spread all over the place. And then you would need a lot of test resources, which cost a lot of money, of course, to go through it and start writing test cases. And that's one of the reasons why we checked SQAI. And there we notice, of course, based on AI, it can go through a lot of documentation a lot faster than a human being ever would be able to do so. And of course, then it could be summarized and the tester could validate the outcome of that to then continue, adjust where needed or correct the test cases. We did notice during the POC that, okay, we have a lot of documentation, some of them is outdated, but nevertheless, we could use SQAI as well to pinpoint those points in the documentation and have them corrected, because in the end, the tester would be doing that manually, because they would be creating test cases, and then the test case would not be correct, the document should be fixed, and the same action is needed for SQAI, but then we still have the way that SQAI is working, that we can do it faster. And that's also the reason that we said, okay, let's start working with SQAI, use it together with the product team, and I'll come back to that in a second. But also, of course, the automation part that Dean has just demoed as well gives us a lot of benefits timing-wise. Quickly about the integrations that we use at EverESSt. We have SQAI connected with Jira and Confluence as inputs, so all documentation on Confluence and Jira is used. And then we send our test cases to TestRail once they are validated by the testers. And then future-wise as well, we are checking to have it with our code repository implemented, as well as the automation part, so that we know, okay, automation test scripts can be created, but also checking with developers so that they can use it as well, like Dean just explained at the end of the demo as well. Okay, so the biggest added value at EverESSt now at this moment in time is, like I said, we notice documentation. There is a lot of documentation, a lot of versions of documentation, and together with the product team, we are using SQAI. So not only the testers are using SQAI, but also the product owners, business analysts are asking SQAI, give me some information from Confluence on this specific feature. And then based on the response, they are going to correct documentation wherever needed, so that the tester doesn't need to do that specifically in a meeting with the product owner, for example. The product owner can do that by themselves, and then share this information with the tester, who can then continue creating test cases, get summaries on the test analysis, etc. Which is a step that we had to take. As I said, the documentation was not fully complete. Based on that action, we are able to continue and use it this way. So also faster test analysis. If we do it with a lot of test analysts, it would take a lot of time. It's a lot of manual work. It's a lot of searching where to find the correct information. SQAI can do that a lot faster. And then based on the progress that we are making now, we do feel that it's going a lot faster. And then also based on that, we're going to do more and faster test case design using SQAI. And then in the next slide, I'll let Jora explain a bit about automation, how we are going to use that in the future as well.
Yes, thank you. First off, maybe my name is Joran and I'm a technical tester at EverESSt. So I work on setting up the scenarios and doing technical tests through mostly API calls. So we're now also working on setting up our automation framework, and seeing that we're now also utilizing SQAI for mostly documentation specific stuff now. We also want to take into account that while we're building this automation framework, how can we build it in a way that we can utilize the power of a platform like SQAI? So what would be a good way for us to have it design test cases or generate test cases so that we could easily implement it in the automation framework? Things to consider are, for example, business readable test languages like BDD or Gauge that are written in a more descriptive way, so that we can have less technical people also work with SQAI, get the documentation, and then generate these descriptive test scenarios that we could then plug into our automation framework, and we could leave the more technical stuff for us. So in the background, program everything that is needed technically. That would probably save us a lot of time in the test generation part, and we only need to implement the steps that are very necessary. And in that way, we could also utilize the MCP possibilities that Dean showed, where we can use SQAI as our co-pilot in the coding part. So not only could we use it to generate those test cases or test scenarios, but also help us write functions in our automation framework that would make it a lot faster than that we would have to do it ourselves. So that's what we're looking into right now in terms of like the automation framework part. Then how do we use it at this point in time? Is, like we said, mostly for documentation, gathering all the necessary information from the different locations where we have it stored, and then also verifying that it's still up to date and it has everything that we need. So specifically, our test analysts use, for example, a prompt that you can see here to find all available documentation and context for specific features that we are working on right now. And we tell it to search it in Jira to get all the specific information from the items, and then give us a summarization of the most important things, like the purpose of the feature, the status, dependencies, known issues. But it's very important still that the human in the loop is there to verify that everything is correct, based on, for example, those sources that were utilized that you could see in the output from the AI chat, so that we can verify, is this perhaps old documentation somehow that is still being used that shouldn't be used, so we can correct these kinds of things. So this is where we are at this point in time, where we involve our business analysts and our product owners to verify this documentation and verify that everything is up to date. And we do that by asking for that feature documentation in SQAI. And it's a good thing that everybody can see or experience the platform themselves. They can see how easy it is to gather all the information, but also like visually see where it comes from and where they need to check if everything is up to date, and maybe fill the gaps that are not there. Right now, it's mostly documentation that pre-existed, but it's also a good thing to show us that how we need to set up our Confluence or how we need to set up our Jira, which information is critical, so that we can get the best outcome of information for the different scenarios that we need to build. And so we can improve the overall documentation quality, not only the documentation that's already there, but also considering taking everything into account for new documentation that is being created. So that's it in a nutshell, I think.
Okay, great. Thank you both, or all three of you. Let's move to questions. Let's take the most popular one. When generating automated test cases in AI, the AI will learn from the existing automation framework in GitHub. But what if you are in the beginning of a project and don't have an existing framework yet? What is the suggested approach in this case?
I can answer that one. In that case, from the perspective of SQAI, we work with a few service partners who often have these boilerplate test frameworks already available, and also are our software testing partners. And they can just place their boilerplates in that Git repo, and then SQAI gradually learns the more the testing landscape grows, but it will start out with using that boilerplate in one example. Another approach would be if you would create a SQAI README file, which is a bit the same like a rules file in Cursor, where you can describe the result you're obtaining in the technology you want. And then SQAI will go ahead and create the boilerplate in the first pull request, which will be a lengthy one to review then. But after reviewing that and adapting it, then it's growing along the way.
Yeah, maybe also from our perspective, the idea that we have is that we're setting up the automation framework now, and we are taking some bigger test scenarios that we are working on, and we are programming them ourselves, and then we would plug it in to SQAI, and so that we have the examples and we have like full-fledged test cases that we can show that it can use to train itself and iterate on that for test cases in the future.
Thank you so much. Let's take the next one. Voila. Not all LLMs are built equal. Is there a clear overview on how you ensure data is not used for training in each model?
Yes, most definitely. But the concept is fairly simple. We pull in the models in a private cloud, and the data does not leave there for starters. And on the other hand, we only pick models which have a certain, how would you say it, trust score when it comes to making sure that data doesn't go out of it. Yeah. Also, it's augmentation that we do and not large language model fine tuning, just to make that clear.
Okay, thank you. Next one. When adding manual documents, are the features that trace re-uploads of a file, changes to documentation, and traces this back to generated test cases to suggest updates?
In short, yes, from the perspective that it will override your previous documentation. The only thing you still have to do in your team is make agreements on when and how to upload, and make sure that you're only uploading stuff that is fairly complete, because if it's not a live integration, everything what you upload, SQAI take that as a truth. With live integrations, you can scope it.
Okay, thanks. Maybe a linked question here. With some projects, people have only limited access to specific documentation pages. Is it possible to limit access per user type and at the same time have also specific areas that are not to be used for training?
Yes and no. Yes, in the sense that you can scope your information pages and integrations by scoped API tokens, and also making sure that it is scoped with in line with your user types. On the other hand, we also have SSO features coming up where it will make that a little bit easier.
Okay, thanks. When it consults so many sources, it would be difficult for a user to know which is the correct source for writing a test case. Is there any suggestion to make it more specific? Generally, in real time, it would be one source of truth from where the test case is designed.
I think that's one you can answer better, EverESSt guys, because you have a lot of sources that are being used in conjunction.
Well, I think it's not so much that you can expect the AI to know which of your resources contains the truth. I mean, that's where the human in the loop is still very important, because only you can judge which one of the sources is actually the correct one. So you would just use the consulted sources as a means of seeing where it got the information and then corrected or removed sources that are no longer necessary.
Okay, great. Next one. Can the tool also provide proposed fixes for out-of-date documentation? I think we just answered that, or partially.
Feature-wise, I would say yes. Experience-wise, I look again to 𝗕𝗿𝗀 and Joran because I assume you partially also use it that way, right?
Yes, I think in the sense that if you are going to combine different sources, that you could specify or define which is the actual truth or which is the correct information. But I don't know technically actually if we don't use it to say update Confluence or update SQAI. That's still something we'd like to do ourselves.
Yeah, could you ask via prompting where's the difference or something like that?
No, that's not something that we use at the moment. No.
I've seen other customers did use it that way. Also, if your information has text and date stamps, it can help you to spot out of date stuff against prior versions of the documentation. But it very much depends how you have set up your documentation landscape. That also partially determines the way SQAI responds on it, because it stays non-deterministic, of course.
Okay. Let me check. There's one question. Still, what is the timeline of implementing new tech stack as part of MCP if it is not yet the supported one?
So I assume here that the person asking the question is referring to the part where I showed which MCP integrations we already have. First of all, we have a roadmap and a wish list on the website, so you can add your requested MCP integration there. If your platform in specific has an MCP server or an MCP client, that can happen fairly quickly in one iteration if it's upvoted. Yeah. And with fairly quickly, I mean we can have that within the 2 weeks, but from the part when we officially pick it up in our sprint. For that, it needs to be upvoted on the roadmap, because we are completely, how to say, customer-led when it comes to features. We want to offer real value. So if a specific integration would add value to you, just put it on the wish list so we can put it on our roadmap.
Okay, great. I think those were all the questions. Let me check quickly. Yes. In case you have questions later on, of course, you can still contact us and we will make sure the question gets answered. I want to thank all 3 of you again for this session. It was really informative and hope to see all of you next time. You can follow us on LinkedIn, where you can see every next session being published, and subscribe to the ones which interest you. So hope to see you next time. Thank you all for joining. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Everybody, bye-bye.